I've been thinking about this a lot more recently, especially after discussing it with some of my friends. And honestly, a lot of people are debating whether or not to get the Switch 2 at launch, or even wait as long as a year before they considered getting one. And that's down to a handful of factors. One blatantly obvious one being price. The Switch 2 is significantly, at least notably, more expensive than the original was at launch. If you don't remember, the launch price for the original Nintendo Switch was $300, and the current launch price for the base model Nintendo Switch 2 is $450, which some might argue is reasonable. I sit somewhere in the middle. It's not great, but at least it wasn't $500. I would ideally see it more at $400 because I see it as more as an upgrade to the OLED, and I think $100 compared in terms of a price increase seems to be way more reasonable than the $150 that they're currently asking, and $200 if you get the deluxe edition that comes with the game, which it should no matter what come with the game in the box, because that's just obvious. You know, Wii Sports or something was one of the most popular games on the system, and that came with the Wii. And I'm not asking for it to be something as crazy as getting a Mario Kart or something. I'm just talking about something basic, like a Wii Sports that can be sort of showcasing all of the unique features that the Switch 2 may provide. Something that teaches players what it does. And they do have an application that sort of teaches you how to use the Switch 2 and all of its new unique features. But you have to pay like $20 to get that. So it's not really something most people are going to buy, and honestly, seems like a kind of waste of money on their part to even develop in the first place, because I highly doubt there's going to be a large market of people who want to buy a tutorial. And I've been seeing more people talking that they're already interested in getting a Switch, but they don't currently have one, and seeing all of the price and the hype for the Switch 2 is actually making them consider getting an original Switch, whether that's a base model Switch, a Switch Lite, or even an OLED. People in my comment section have even said that they just bought their OLED for the very first time, and they have no intention on upgrading at least a year, just until the hype dies down. Pricing and availability might be getting better by that point, and honestly, that makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. Because if there isn't a lot of games at launch that really, grab your attention, and if most of the games during most of the directs we've seen don't really catch your eye either, there really isn't any reason to pick up a Nintendo Switch at launch. Only recently was my decision set in stone whether or not to get the Switch 2, and that's primarily because I was initially debating whether or not to get it in the first place, because if I was going to make a video about it, I would have just gotten a loaner unit from one of my friends who are getting it. But as it currently stands, I have to get a new Switch because my current one finally died. I originally got my Switch back in 2017. Same battery, original, stick drifting Joy-Cons. It was a piece of crap, but it was my piece of crap. And then it finally gave up the ghost, the battery died. I replaced it, but something else electrically was wrong with it. One of the IC MOSFETs or whatever down near the charging port died, and to get it fixed at a repair shop, that alone would cost like $200. And if that's almost halfway to getting a Switch 2, I might as well just put that towards getting a Switch 2 than repairing my current Switch. Thankfully, I had cloud saves enabled, so I was able to recover most of my things on my sister's Switch as sort of a halfway home for those devices in saves. But it is a little inconvenient. There's one series of game that did not have cloud saves, and honestly, it's the one that probably hurts the most, and that is Pokemon. Every single Pokemon game on my Switch doesn't have cloud saves. I don't know whether that was an intentional choice by the developer or something I had to go in and enable after the fact, but I don't have any of my Pokemon saves. Legends of Arceus, gone. Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Eat Pikachu, completely gone. Many other Pokemon games from Sword and Shield and the Little Scarlet Violet I played, all gone, and that is soul crushing. And Minecraft, which hurts but doesn't hurt the same way, because I could always pick the same seeds, play Minecraft again, so it doesn't really hurt as much as I thought it would. But Stardew Valley would have sucked, but at least that was saved. So for many reasons, that is sort of nailed me into the coffin of getting a Switch 2, because it's just logically a more financially prudent decision in comparison to repairing my current Switch. And a lot of people who want to save a few bucks and wanted to just play some of the Switch games that are coming to Switch 2 and the original Switch don't necessarily need a Switch 2 quite yet, so you can get away with getting a Switch Lite for like $100. And especially right around this launch window, Switch prices are going to an all-time low as we enter in the launch season for the Switch 2. So for a lot of people who don't necessarily care about the next year's worth of games coming from Nintendo, there is very little reason to get a Switch 2. Nintendo claims that there will be enough stock that everybody should be able to get their hands on one at launch, which I anticipate is a bold-faced lie, because they said the same thing about the original Switch, and that thing was practically unobtainium for the first 8 or 9 months of that launch, and then same thing happened again during the pandemic where Switches were rarer than hen's teeth. Because practically speaking, as it currently stands, there, at least for me, isn't a huge amount that is really pushing the needle one way or the other than my dead Switch, so I sort of have to get a new Switch if I wanted to keep playing all my games. So for me, I have realistically no choice if I wanted to keep playing my Nintendo games. But for a lot of people out there, I can see them not having a lot of good reasons to commit one way or the other. Because as it currently stands, it's not a good time to buy a Nintendo Switch too. And pre-orders are insanely hard to come by these days. So for some people, it's just more practical of a waiting game at this point. Wait even a few months and you might have a significantly better chance than trying to get one at launch. It's all about just having a little bit of patience. I anticipate the Switch 2's launch being practically chaotic for a lot of people because the attempt in the past to get original Switches at launch was just a nightmare. And even though Nintendo, as I stated before, claims that it will be better this time, I just really don't think it's going to work out like they think it will. And for owners of the Switch OLED, they might even see it as a downgrade because of the IPS type display. A lot of people love the OLED, and frankly, it spoils a lot of other display types for them. It's really hard to go from an OLED display to an IPS or as low as a TN. For some people, it's honestly really hard. The inky blacks, the deep color saturation, the amazing brightness and whatnot are things some people truly can't live without once they get a taste of it. It is a much higher quality experience. Any users of Steam Deck OLEDs would know an OLED drastically changes the game and improves visual quality and clarity across the board. Even though it might not be as perceptible to the layman, once you're sort of accommodated and used to that level of quality, it's kind of hard to go back. A lot of people in my comments who have Switch OLEDs are saying that they're not really going to be buying a Switch 2, at least for quite a while, because of the sheer fact that it doesn't have an OLED display. Some are even claiming that they'll be waiting until there's an OLED version of the Switch 2, which I anticipate to happen, of course, because knowing Nintendo, they will do their mid-cycle refreshes, their slight redesigns, and their slight updates here and there, with a potential Switch 2 Lite and a Switch 2 OLED seemingly potentially their new modus operandi. Though I'm of the opinion the Switch OLED was a stopgap solution from when they initially wanted to make a Switch 2, but due to the problems in production and the pandemic, had to push out that plan further down the road. And so what we got was a sort of half measure. So hopefully we don't find ourselves in a similar situation once again, but personally, I don't think it will be as good as Nintendo's hoping it's going to be. And I would love to hear what you guys think though. Are you guys going to wait for the Switch 2 hype to die down before you get your own? Are you buying a Switch now, like an OLED or Switch Lite, as a sort of cost-saving measure until the stock and availability gets a little bit better later down the line, because you don't necessarily need a Switch 2 at launch? I would love to hear what you guys think about this down below. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. All the other Switch Reviewers down below. And last but not least, have a wonderful day.